So, Archbishop, for the Nobel Foundation, we have a set of questions.
Okay.
My first question is, what, in your opinion, makes a good leader? What qualities?
Yes. It's a question that we've had to deal with quite a bit, looking at some of the leaders we have had who have sometimes led their countries into disastrous situations. I think ultimately you want a leader who is also a servant. I mean, really, the leader is a leader because he is a servant. I mean, you look at some of the greatest leaders. Nelson Mandela is someone who is not in it for his own aggrandizement. He leads on behalf of, for the sake of. That is one. And it almost always is that the great leader will show just how he is or she is a leader for the sake of the land by suffering.
A person who is a servant as well. That is,
Yeah.
that is the ultimate.
For me, yes, that you are not one who is seeking self-glorification, who wants to feather his nest. Just say at I mean, you can look at Mother Teresa or any, I mean, Mahatma Gandhi, the Dalai Lama. You'll see that a great characteristic is they are doing something, sacrificial in a way for the sake of those they are serving, and suffering. Well, the Dalai Lama has been in exile for 50 years. Nelson Mandela was in jail. Mother Teresa lives with the poor. She lived with the poor. Mahatma Gandhi, you could go on. Martin Luther King. And then the great leader is someone who is inspiring, inspires his followers, her followers. Aung San Suu Kyi. I mean, she said nothing very much for 11 years, and yet she remains the only real leader in Burma. Why? That somehow the leader encapsulates and somehow represents the best that is in the people, the aspirations of the people, and yes, it is someone who can inspire.
What makes a good student then?
A good student,
Yeah.
who learns all of these things, but also questions. You know, someone who's not just passive, sitting there and has things thrown at them, but they question. In South Africa, one of our big problems was that our education system seemed to tell people what to think instead of teaching people how to think, and saying, we want you to have questioning minds. We want you to be, in a sense, skeptical. You must say, I don't believe this until I have proof that that satisfies me that is so. We mustn't. We have often confused authoritative with authoritarian. the authoritarian says, you must do this because I say so. Authoritative says, well, prove whether it is true or not. And because this one has built up a credibility, when they say something, you say, ah, yes, this person, when he says, I want you to try to forgive, he speaks authoritatively because he has gone through a process himself where he showed that he could forgive.
In the same line, what makes a good and working environment then?
Well, I would hope, that it was a life-enhancing environment. There are far too many situations where you would say they are life threatening, many of them. Certainly they undermine the good life. I would hope you could have an environment that encouraged curiosity, being inquisitive, and trying to seek out the truth. But it must also be an affirming environment, which enables people to feel affirmed. Far too frequently you find leaders who are scared of the abilities of others. They are threatened by the ability of others, and so they tend to throw their weight around. So we go back to what is a good leader. The good leader is so self-assured that he does not need to keep showing off his power. He has an authority that is ultimately a moral authority, and so the good environment is an environment that is affirming, that encourages others, that builds up, not one that is forever denigrating and belittling others.
When you were given or received the Peace Prize 1984, it was at the height of apartheid, and you were at the stage of leadership in South Africa. What did it mean for you personally to be receiving this award?
Yeah. At about that time, South Africa was virtually off the radar screen in the world, and we were feeling somewhat disillusioned, disheartened. Apartheid seemed to be going to be there forever. And the Nobel Peace Prize came at a very important time in helping to reignite our people's hope. The world is watching, and the world recognizes that our cause is a just cause. It is a noble cause. And it came at a time when it was important to focus attention on our situation, and that is what it helped to do. The other thing was that it helped to open doors that previously were closed. I had been trying to get an invitation to the White House, and up to that point had failed dismally. But as soon as it was announced that I had been awarded the the 1984 Peace Prize, word came from the White House. I didn't have to ask them. They said, "Oh, the president will receive you in the Oval Office." And I've sometimes said to people too, one of the funniest things about getting the Nobel Peace Prize was that you were turned into an instant. You were turned into an instant oracle. Things you said before you got the Nobel Peace Prize and which people had ignored. When you repeated these things now, after getting the Peace Prize, people said, wow, isn't that... Everybody was paying attention that they hadn't previously done.
Mm-hmm. What did it mean at home in relationship to the apartheid regime? Were you not afraid, or at times, that they would try to stop you being as forward as you were?
Yes, but I mean, that was part of, as it were, the normal course of things. That if you are involved in a struggle, you realize, I mean, that there are going to be casualties, and the perpetrators of injustice would want to deal with you, and so you just had to be prepared for that. But the prize also obviously increased our profile, and possibly helped to some extent in protecting us.
Were you born a rebel, Rouse, or do you think, as the title of the new biography is?
I'm actually very shy. You know, people don't believe this, that in a way I was self-effacing. And I don't remember that I was, well, rebellious, no. In fact, I was quite a nice young guy. You know, I mean, I look back and say, when you compare us with some of the things that you young people have been doing, oh, I was very docile. I mean, very, very docile. I mean, look at how long we accepted inferior education, whereas young people in 1976 refused. You know, no, I don't think that I have a rebellious streak in me. I'm very, very dull and very safe.
But you made people see what was right and wrong in the apartheid system. Yes. And what is your driving force?
I always say to people that I became a leader in the struggle against apartheid by default. Our real leaders were either in jail or in exile or serving banning orders and so forth. I really am amazed at how God can use almost any kind of instrument, and I was one of those instruments that God used in our particular situation, and it's been a very great privilege. Yeah.
Do you think that the Peace Prize in any way have made you that there comes with a task for the future as well?
Yes. It's a wonderful privilege and honor, but it also has obligations. I mean, and sometimes we have tried to recognize that you know no longer, as it were, belong just to yourself. You to some extent are now a servant of the world, and for instance, a few years ago, as Nobel Peace Laureates, we said we wanted to go and see Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma, and we were not allowed. We went to Thailand, but it was a corporate action on the part of Nobel laureates, peace laureates, acting together on for a specific purpose. And generally, we have seen that we have a voice that the world tends to listen to when a number of us get together and make a statement about a particular issue. The world does take it, I think, very seriously. And we have now and again done that, come together as Nobel Peace Laureates and said, let us issue a statement.
You have engaged yourself now in the Darfur conflict, for example.
Yes.
What is that part of your worldwide peace work?
Yes. As you probably know, there was an initiative called the Elders that was an initiative of Nelson Mandela and Graça Machel. And we are hoping as elders, to say, well, this is a global village, and elders in the village are thought to be repositories of wisdom and experience and perhaps some authority, and we would hope that we would use all of these for the benefit of humankind and to look at areas which are problematical, which have conflict, and see whether we can make a contribution. We hope we can make that kind of contribution, a useful contribution in bringing about a resolution of the problem in Darfur. We were also going to be or are involved in Zimbabwe, Burma, the Middle East,
What other issues, apart from the serious conflicts that we are seeing, engage you today? I believe that you are also very engaged in environmental issues.
Yes. Well, very recently we had a wonderful service in Tromsø in Norway, in the Arctic Cathedral, where they had a service to mark World Environment Day, and they were speaking about climate change. And we had a woman bishop from Greenland who spoke about how global warming was already thinning the ice, and so they can't skate easily over the ice. It's too thin. So it's affecting their way of life. They cannot go hunting as easily as they used to. And then they had someone from the Pacific Islands who was saying that the level of the sea was rising so much, it was flooding their islands, and it was destroying their vegetation, the trees, because the salt water was seeping into the roots. And then they had someone from Africa who was speaking about how a conflict was arising in her community because of the scarcity of grazing. And of course, therefore part of the reason why there is conflict there is is that there is competition for ever reducing pasture. And yes, we are very exercised by the whole question of the environment, and are saying we need to impress on people that each of us can make a difference. We can reduce the size of our carbon footprint. We can each be careful that we do not litter, and people can begin to learn that you can use clothes that are less expensive, and do not use as much energy as the conventional ones, incandescent globes and things of that kind. Yeah,
it is in this issue. I think the children often in the poor countries that are mostly affected, yet they are not the culprits of the global warming. How does that make you feel? Is that sort of anger that I see sometimes arising in you when you see how unjust it still is?
Yes, well, you are saying, I mean, something that is important, that unless we begin to be quite serious about the fact that actually we are one family, we are constantly going to be running up against problems such as this, where the wealthy might become irresponsible and the victims are not themselves, but the victims are the vulnerable, the poor. To say we are not going to be able to survive except together. We are not going to be prosperous except together. And that we can spend as much money as we like. We will never win wars against terror as long as there are conditions that make people desperate.
Mm-hmm. And one of these issues is the environmental issue.
Absolutely, yes. That I mean, if you are going to have less water, I mean, people are going to be fighting over diminishing resources, and the weaker are obviously going to be the ones who get the worst of that argument. The strong will be grasping all they can, and we're saying there is still enough for everybody if we could have the good sense of trying to share.
I just want to see what we have learned from South Africa is that there was a way forward by accepting the TRC and that you have always said there is a need to forgiveness. Yeah. You have to. How do we as people then learn how to forgive each other? What can you tell us?
One of the things is, how do you learn how to swim? You don't learn how to swim by reading books. You learn how to swim by swimming. And so you learn to forgive by forgiving. And all of us have, at one time or another, had to forgive. We know what it means to forgive. We know what it means to be forgiven. And let's just apply what we know.
Okay, thank you very much.
God bless you.